Dear friends, welcome to Heart of the Bible. Let's explore the true meaning of the Bible together.
A long time ago, there was a place called the land of Canaan, where lived an old grandfather named Jacob, who had 12 sons. The youngest son, Joseph, was very cute, with bright eyes like the stars in the sky, and he was also very smart and understanding, so Grandpa Jacob loved him very much. One day, Grandpa Jacob found a lot of beautiful colorful silk threads, red like ripe apples, blue like a big sky, yellow like the golden sun, green like spring leaves. With these threads, Grandpa Jacob sewed a beautiful colored coat for Joseph. When Joseph wore this colorful garment, it was as if he had become a glowing cherub. When the brothers saw Joseph in the colored garment, they looked at him with eyes wide open. The oldest brother, Reuben, thought to himself, "Why is Dad so nice to Joseph?" The second brother, Simeon, grunted and said, "It's just a dress. What's there to be proud of?" The other brothers also whispered, and they were all a little jealous of Joseph in their hearts. But Joseph, being so young, had no idea what his brothers were thinking. He ran happily around his brothers in his colorful clothes, spinning and jumping, and said to them, "Look, the colorful clothes my father made for me are so beautiful." He thought that his brothers would be as happy as he was, but he didn't know that because of the colorful clothes, his brothers' jealousy of him was getting deeper and deeper. As the days went by, his brothers' jealousy of Joseph grew stronger and stronger, just like a small fire. One day, Joseph came to play with his brothers as he always did. When the brothers saw him, they winked at each other, but on the surface they smiled and said to Joseph, "Joseph, we will take you to a fun place." Joseph was so happy to hear this that he jumped up and down and followed his brothers. They came to a remote place where there was a dry well. The brothers suddenly changed their faces, rushed up at once, and grabbed Joseph. Joseph was startled and cried out, "What are you doing, brothers?" None of the brothers said a word, and with all their might they stripped Joseph of his colored clothes. Joseph struggled desperately, tears in his eyes. He did not understand why his brothers want to do this to him. At this point, his elder brother Reuben became a little impatient and said, "He is our brother, we can't harm his life. Let's throw him into this dry well, let him suffer a little first, and then we'll find a way to save him later." The other brothers thought about it and thought it was a good idea, so they threw Joseph into the dry well. Joseph was so scared in the dark, dry well that he cried out, "Help me, brothers." But his brothers went away without looking back, leaving Joseph's cries echoing in the dry well. Joseph was scared and anxious in the dry well, not knowing what to do. Just at this time, there was a lively noise in the distance, and it turned out to be a group of Ishmaelite merchants passing by. When Judah saw these merchants, a bad idea came into his mind and he said to his brothers, "It's no good leaving Joseph in the well all the time. Why don't we sell him to these merchants and make some money?" The brothers thought about it and thought it was a good idea, since they wouldn't have to see Joseph anymore anyway if they sold him, and it would still be a bit of a benefit. So they pulled Joseph out of the dry well. When Joseph saw that his brothers were going to sell him to strangers, he cried even more, and he pulled at his brothers' clothes and begged, "Brothers, don't sell me. I will never show off my colored clothes again." But his brothers were cruel and did not listen to him at all. They brought Joseph to the merchant, who looked at Joseph and thought he was quite resourceful, so he gave his brothers 20 pieces of silver and took Joseph away. Joseph cried as he watched his brothers get farther and farther away, sad and afraid. He didn't know what would happen to him if he was taken away to a strange place. His brothers, on the other hand, were a little happy with the silver, but they were also a little upset. When they got home, they said to Grandpa Jacob, "Dad, Joseph was eaten by a wild animal, and all we found was his colored coat." With that, they showed Grandpa Jacob the dirty colored clothes. When Grandpa Jacob saw the colored clothes, he was so sad that he cried out, ate and drank nothing, and wore his black clothes every day, grieving for Joseph. Joseph was taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, the chief guard of the Egyptian Pharaoh. In Potiphar's house, Joseph was especially obedient and hard-working. Whether it was cleaning the house or taking care of things around the house, he did it quickly and well. Potiphar soon realized that Joseph was a capable boy, and trusted him more and more, giving Joseph the responsibility of running the house. Although Joseph was young, he kept the house in good order. The servants in the house also loved to listen to him because Joseph was always friendly and never lost his temper with them. Slowly, Potiphar's home became more cozy and organized under Joseph's management. The flowers in the garden bloomed more brightly and the house was always clean. However, Potiphar's wife was not a very good person at heart. When she saw that Joseph was handsome and clever, she tried to make Joseph do bad things. But Joseph knew in his heart that this was wrong, so he firmly refused Potiphar's wife every time. This made Potiphar's wife very angry, and she felt she could not save face. One day, Potiphar's wife came to Joseph again while Potiphar was not at home and told him to do bad things. Joseph, as before, rejected her decisively, then turned around and tried to leave. Annoyed, Potiphar's wife tugged at her clothes and pretended to be bullied, and when Potiphar came back, she cried and said to Potiphar, "Joseph tried to bully me." When Potiphar heard this, he was so angry that he believed his wife's words without asking carefully. He put Joseph in jail. Joseph was especially aggrieved, and he didn't understand why he had to be put in jail when he had obviously done the right thing. But Joseph didn't complain. He did what he always did and believed that something good would happen. In prison, Joseph was also kind and friendly, and he got along well with the other prisoners. The jailers in the prison also took care of Joseph when they saw how understanding he was. In the prison, Joseph met two prisoners. One was Pharaoh's wine authority and the other was Pharaoh's caterer. One night they both had strange dreams, but they didn't know what they meant and were anxious. When Joseph saw their sad faces, he asked them what was wrong. Then the wine dealer and the caterer told Joseph about the dream they had. The wine governor said, "I dreamed that there was a vine before me with 3 branches, and the branches soon sprouted and blossomed, and produced ripe grapes. I squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and handed the cup to Pharaoh." When Joseph heard this, he laughed and said to the wine minister, "The meaning of this dream is that within 3 days Pharaoh will reinstate you in your official position, and you will be able to pass Pharaoh the cup of wine again, just as you did before." When the chief caterer heard Joseph's interpretation of the dream for the wine government, he thought it was marvelous, and he also hurried to tell Joseph his dream. "I dreamed that I was carrying 3 baskets on my head, and that the top basket contained all kinds of food baked for the Pharaoh, but that birds of prey came and ate the contents of the baskets." When Joseph heard this, his face became a little serious, and he said to the chief caterer, "This is not a very good dream, and within 3 days Pharaoh will execute you." When the wine minister and the caterer heard Joseph's explanation, they were skeptical. 3 days passed, and just as Joseph had said, Pharaoh reinstated the wine minister, but put the caterer to death. Sakamasa was happy to be back to work for Pharaoh, but he had forgotten about Joseph's interpretation of his dream. Some time later, Pharaoh also had 2 strange dreams. The first dream was that he dreamed that he was standing by a river, and that 7 fat, strong cows came up out of the river and grazed on the grass. Then 7 thin and ugly cows also came up from the river, and these 7 thin cows ate all the 7 fat cows, but they still looked thin. The second dream was that he saw 7 full ears of wheat growing on a wheat plant, and then 7 dried up ears of wheat grew out, and these 7 dried up ears of wheat swallowed up the 7 full ears of wheat as well. When Pharaoh woke up, he was so disturbed that he asked many people to interpret his dream, but none of them could speak to his satisfaction. At this time, the wine government suddenly remembered Joseph, and he hurriedly said to Pharaoh, "I remembered that there was a Hebrew boy in the prison who had interpreted the dreams of me and the chief of the meal, and he said it accurately." Pharaoh heard this and immediately had Joseph brought out of prison. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, and he saluted him unperturbed and politely. Pharaoh told Joseph about the dream he had, and when Joseph heard it, he thought for a while and said, "Pharaoh, these 2 dreams actually mean the same thing. The 7 fat cows and the 7 full ears of wheat mean that Egypt will have 7 years of good harvest, while the 7 thin cows and the 7 shriveled ears of wheat mean that after the harvest, there will be 7 years of severe famine. The famine would eat up all the grain that had been accumulated during the harvest." When Pharaoh heard this, it made sense to him, and he asked Joseph anxiously, "What should we do then?" Joseph replied, "Pharaoh can pick a wise and intelligent man and have him collect the grain harvested throughout Egypt and store it in warehouses during the 7 years of the harvest. Then when the famine comes, there will be food to eat." Pharaoh looked at Joseph and thought that he was a marvelous man for not only being able to interpret dreams accurately, but also for coming up with such a good solution. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I see that you are the clever and wise one. I appoint you to be in charge of this matter, and the grain of the whole Egypt will be managed by you." So Pharaoh put a ring, a symbol of power, on Joseph's hand, dressed him in splendid clothes, and made him sit in his passenger car, and the people had to bow down to him. All of a sudden Joseph went from being a prisoner in jail to a very powerful man in Egypt. But Joseph was not proud. He immediately began to work in earnest. During the 7 years of the harvest, he traveled all over Egypt, asking people to turn in their excess grain and store it in the warehouses of each city. The warehouses were piled so high that they were like little mountains. The 7 years of harvest passed quickly, and the 7 years of famine came. Not only in Egypt, but in many other places around the country, people had no food to eat and were starving. At this time, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to everyone. When word spread, people from all over came to Egypt to buy grain, including Joseph's brothers. The brothers had come to Egypt from the land of Canaan, and they stood before Joseph, but they did not recognize him. Joseph looked at his brothers with mixed feelings, remembering the days when he played with them as a child and when they sold him. But Joseph didn't show it right away. He purposely pretended he didn't recognize them and asked a lot of questions. The brothers said anxiously, "We have come to buy grain. Our father and brothers at home are starving." When Joseph heard this, something in his heart moved him, and he decided to test his brothers. So Joseph pretended to be angry and said, "You are spies who have come here to spy on Egypt." The brothers were terrified and hurriedly explained, "We really just came to buy grain. We have an old father and a young brother at home, and we can't afford to be without food." Joseph saw the anxious appearance of his brothers and remembered his father Jacob, and the resentment in his heart gradually dissipated. He could not hold back his tears and finally said to his brothers, "Brothers, I am Joseph. You sold me here, but God put me through all this to save the lives of many people. Now that the famine is so severe, you must go back and bring your father and your whole family to Egypt. There is enough food here for our family to never be separated again." When the brothers heard this, they were surprised and delighted, and at the same time very ashamed. They did not expect that their brother, who had once been bullied by them, would now not only forgive them, but also be willing to help the whole family through their difficulties. They rushed back to the land of Canaan and told Grandpa Jacob the good news. Grandpa Jacob couldn't believe his ears, and only when he saw with his own eyes the caravan that Joseph had sent to pick them up did he believe it was all true. Grandpa Jacob brought his whole family to Egypt, where Joseph himself greeted them. The family was finally reunited and everyone cried and laughed. From then on, Joseph and his family lived happily ever after in Egypt. They never had to fear famine again, and the family loved and cared for each other. And Joseph's kindness, wisdom, and forgiveness became a beautiful story that was passed down in people's mouths.
Thank you for watching this installment of Bible Stories. If you think it's still good, follow me, give me a like, and let's grow together in the wisdom of the Bible.